You're always in training, whether you know it or not. Life doesn't pause to ask if you're ready to start learning. It simply begins. Every moment, every habit, every decision you make is part of a training program that's either building you up or slowly breaking you down. The problem is, most people go through life unaware that they're even enrolled in a training program. They assume training is something formal, something you sign up for, attend, and graduate from. But in reality, training is always happening. It happens when you get up in the morning or hit the snooze button. It happens when you choose to read a book or scroll endlessly on your phone. It happens when you speak with discipline or when you lash out in frustration. Each of those moments is a repetition, and repetitions build patterns. Patterns build character, and character builds destiny. This truth is both powerful and humbling. You don't get to opt out of training, you only get to choose what you're training for. You can train for discipline, or you can train for laziness. You can train for patience, or you can train for impulsiveness. The training is in the repetition. Whatever you do repeatedly, you get better at. So if you constantly avoid hard things, guess what? You get better at avoidance. If you always delay, you become skilled at procrastination. If you blame others, you strengthen your sense of victimhood. On the flip side, if you repeatedly hold yourself accountable, you're training for leadership. If you push through discomfort, you're training for resilience. If you choose humility over ego, you're training for growth. The biggest illusion people buy into is that only intentional efforts count as training. That's a mistake. Intentional training is powerful, yes, but unintentional training still happens, and often with even stronger results because it goes unchecked. If you're not aware of the behavior you're repeating, that behavior becomes a default mode. It becomes who you are without you even realizing it. Think about the people who say, "That's just how I am." They're right, but only because they've rehearsed that identity for years. Nobody is born with a short temper or an anxious mindset or a lazy attitude. Those are learned behaviors, practiced behaviors, trained behaviors. The mind is like a muscle. It gets stronger through use and weaker through neglect. If you constantly train your mind to look for problems, guess what it will find? More problems. If you train it to look for opportunities, even in difficulty, it will start noticing doors where others only see walls. That's the kind of training that separates people who grow from those who stay stuck. It's not talent, it's not luck, it's not even timing, it's repetition. Intentional or not, consistent behavior creates lasting results. This is why environment matters. The people around you, the content you consume, the places you frequent. Those are part of your training program too. You may not realize it, but when you spend time around people who complain all day, you're training yourself to normalize complaining. When you constantly consume negative news, you're training your brain to expect negativity. When you fill your day with distractions, you're training your focus to scatter. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with disciplined, motivated, positive individuals, that energy becomes part of your routine. You absorb it, you mimic it, you rehearse it even without noticing. That's training. Another area where training is often overlooked is in speech. The way you talk about yourself, about others, about life matters deeply. Words are not just communication tools, they're reinforcement tools. When you say things like, "I'm always tired," or "I can't do that," you're not just describing your state, you're reinforcing it. You're training your identity with language. The words we choose, repeated often enough, become our beliefs. And once you believe something, your behavior starts to match. So if you're careless with your words, you may be unintentionally building a mindset of defeat. But if you're intentional, you can use your words to train courage, confidence, and clarity. Now consider how training shows up in small, seemingly insignificant choices. You might think choosing not to exercise one day isn't a big deal, or that skipping one journal entry, ignoring one budget decision, indulging one emotional outburst is just a temporary lapse. But training doesn't operate on exception, it operates on repetition. The more often you make that small compromise, the easier it becomes to make it again, and before long, it's no longer a choice, it's a habit. It's no longer a moment, it's a lifestyle. People don't fall into bad patterns overnight. They rehearse those patterns step by step, choice by choice, repetition by repetition. And the cost of that unconscious training is high. It shows up in the form of lost time, broken relationships, missed opportunities, low self-worth. But again, the beauty of this reality is that you're never stuck. You're just trained, and training can be changed. It's not about flipping a switch, it's about changing the reps. Want to build discipline? Start practicing discipline in small ways. Get up at the time you said you would. Keep one promise to yourself each day. Say no when you usually say yes. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be repeated. That's how new training begins, slowly, intentionally, consistently, and let's not forget, emotion plays a role in training too. When you repeat a behavior that feels good in the moment but hurts you long term, like overindulgence, distraction, or blame, you train your nervous system to chase comfort instead of purpose. But when you embrace discomfort for the sake of growth, when you push through a workout, speak a difficult truth, or focus deeply on a task, you begin rewiring that same system. You train your body and mind to see short-term pain as an investment in long-term gain. That's maturity, that's mastery, and it starts with simple awareness, the understanding that training is always happening. There are no neutral habits. Every action is either a vote for who you want to become or a reinforcement of who you've been. That means every moment matters more than we think. Every time you show up, even when it's hard, you're training your future. Every time you flinch, hide, or retreat, you're training that version too. And the more consistent you are, the more deeply that version gets ingrained. It's a sobering realization. The life you're living right now is not a coincidence. It's the result of your training. If you feel unprepared for the challenges you're facing, chances are you've been training the wrong areas, or neglecting training altogether. But the solution isn't to panic. It's to take inventory, to look at the daily repetitions and ask, what am I rehearsing? What am I practicing? What am I becoming good at? Whether I want to or not, you're always in training. Every moment is a rep. Every habit is a lesson. Every reaction is a signal. You're sculpting something with each choice, shaping your identity through action. Even your inaction is a form of training, training your reflex to hesitate, delay, or deny your potential. Nothing is neutral. The only question is, are you training intentionally, or are you training by accident? Your habits are repetitions that shape your reality. They are not just things you do. They are systems you follow, whether consciously or unconsciously. Every habit is a decision made easier through repetition. And the more often you repeat a behavior, the more likely it is to become automatic. Once it's automatic, it doesn't require energy, it doesn't require thought. It just becomes what you do. And what you do day after day becomes who you are. Your habits are the quiet architects of your life. They build your routines, sculpt your character, and ultimately shape the reality you live in. People often underestimate the power of small, daily behaviors. They think big change requires big moves, but real transformation is rarely loud or dramatic. It's quiet, it's slow, it's steady, one decision at a time, one action at a time, one choice repeated often enough to carve a groove in your life. Think of a river. It doesn't carve a canyon in a day. It shapes stone with persistence. Habits work the same way. They shape your mind, your emotions, your body, your finances, and your relationships. Not all at once, but inevitably. If you have a habit of procrastinating, even just a little, it seems harmless at first. You put something off here and there. You delay a task. You tell yourself you'll do it tomorrow. But over time, that delay becomes the default, and suddenly you find yourself always behind, always overwhelmed, always scrambling. That small habit has now shaped a stressful reality. The opposite is also true. If you develop a habit of doing just one small task immediately instead of waiting, you train yourself to take initiative. That one behavior, repeated enough times, reshapes your experience of time, control, and momentum. The truth is, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, and your systems are built from your habits. You might want to get fit, grow a business, become more focused, or deepen your relationships. But if your daily habits don't support those outcomes, those goals remain fantasies. They are dreams without direction, hope without a map. Habits are the map. They are the boots on the ground, walking you step by step toward the life you claim to want. Without habits aligned to your desires, you're always stuck in contradiction, hoping for one thing while living out another. Take a close look at your day, not your week, not your year, your average day. How you spend your morning, how you respond to challenges, how you manage time, how you react to frustration. That's your life. That's your training ground. If you're in the habit of waking up late, skipping meals, rushing into the day unprepared, those habits are creating a certain kind of life. And it's not random, it's earned, it's the product of repetition. You don't get the life you want just because you want it. You get the life your habits are building for you. Now, there's another side to this. Habits not only create your external reality, they also create your internal one. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you interpret the world. For instance, if you're in the habit of reacting emotionally to setbacks, you'll live in constant tension. Every inconvenience becomes a storm. But if you've trained yourself through repetition to pause and respond with perspective, then peace becomes your normal state. It's not about pretending problems don't exist. It's about training your internal system to handle them without breaking down. That's the power of habit. It doesn't just change what happens around you. It changes how you experience what happens around you. And here's something most people don't realize. Your habits are always growing. They're either growing in your favor or growing against you because repetition compounds. A small good habit, practiced consistently, will gain momentum. It will become stronger, easier, more automatic. But the same is true for bad habits. Every time you give in to distraction, it becomes easier to do it again. Every time you lie to yourself about starting tomorrow, the lie gets more comfortable. Habits have a sneaky way of growing in the dark. That's why awareness is essential. You have to examine what you're repeating. You have to become a student of your own patterns. Now, there's a myth that changing your life requires willpower. But the truth is, willpower fades. It's limited. It's like a battery. You can't rely on it forever. That's why the real goal isn't to depend on willpower. It's to build habits so strong that you don't need willpower. You don't think about brushing your teeth. You just do it. It's a habit, and the more you can make the right things automatic, the less you have to fight for them. That's the long game. That's freedom. Not the freedom to avoid responsibility, but the freedom to act consistently, even when motivation is low. Every successful person you admire didn't get there by chance. They got there through habits. The habit of learning, the habit of self-control, the habit of consistency, the habit of facing discomfort. Their lives look impressive from the outside, but what you're seeing is the result of thousands of repetitions. Thousands of invisible moments where they chose the hard right over the easy wrong. And you can do the same, but it starts with one repetition, one moment of awareness, one choice to stop doing what no longer serves you and start doing what shapes the future you desire. Think of your habits like seeds. Every action is a seed planted in the soil of your day, and the more often you plant a seed, the more likely it is to take root. With enough care and time, it grows into something permanent, something powerful, But seeds don't grow instantly. They take time, they need consistency, and they need protection. From distractions, from excuses, from the old version of you that wants comfort more than change. That's why habits are both simple and hard. Simple in design, hard in execution. Because the old you is always trying to pull you back into familiar patterns. Not because they're good for you, but because they're easy. Because they're known. When you begin to change your habits, everything inside you will resist. Your brain, your body, even your emotions. That's normal. That's part of the process. But resistance is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something unfamiliar. And the unfamiliar is where growth happens. That's where change begins. When you keep showing up, even when it's uncomfortable. When you keep repeating the right behavior, even when it feels awkward. That's when a habit starts to form. And once it does, momentum takes over. Discipline becomes rhythm. Effort becomes ease. The habits you've built until now have created the life you're living today. And the habits you start building today will create the life you'll live tomorrow. This is not about shame or guilt. It's about responsibility. It's about realizing that you are the architect of your patterns. That every small behavior is a building block. That every repetition matters more than you think. Because repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates comfort, and comfort over time becomes identity. This is why habits are so powerful. They not only define your day, they define your sense of self, and your sense of self dictates what you believe is possible. So when you change your habits, you're not just changing your behavior, you're changing your future. You're rewriting the script, you're building a new foundation, one repetition at a time. You don't stumble into strength, you build it. Strength, whether mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual, is not something you find by accident or inherit by default. It's something you create through intention, repetition, and endurance. It doesn't come from smooth days or easy victories. It comes from the grind, from showing up when it's hard, from doing the uncomfortable things that most people avoid. There's no shortcut, no secret switch, no overnight formula. Strength is earned through pressure, just like a diamond is formed under intense heat and time. If you're looking for real strength, look at the person who keeps going when nothing is going their way. That's where it lives, not in moments of comfort, but in seasons of adversity. Most people admire strength from a distance. They see someone calm under pressure, confident in a crisis, or consistent in a storm, and they think, I wish I could be like that. But what they don't see is the backstory. They don't see the failures that person endured, the habits they had to break, the self-doubt they had to overcome. Strength doesn't advertise its training process. It shows up quietly. It arrives as a result of countless private victories that no one claps for. You build it by doing hard things repeatedly until those hard things no longer break you. You build it by facing resistance, not avoiding it. Avoidance might offer temporary relief, but it never builds resilience. Only exposure and repetition do that. Imagine a person who lifts weights. They don't become strong by lifting what's comfortable. They get stronger by gradually increasing the weight, by tearing down muscle fibers so they can rebuild stronger. In life, strength works the same way. Emotional strength comes from facing emotional weight. Mental strength comes from handling difficult thoughts and making tough decisions. The more challenges you carry, the more your internal muscles grow. The pain doesn't mean you're breaking. It means you're building, you're adapting. You're becoming someone who can carry more without collapsing. And the more often you do that, the more confident you become in your own capacity. People often say things like, I just wasn't born strong, as if strength is a genetic trait. But strength is not a birthright. It's a habit. It's a result of choices made daily. When you choose to speak up instead of stay silent, you're building courage. When you choose to get up after a failure instead of lying in self-pity, you're building resilience. When you choose discipline over distraction, you're building endurance. Each of those choices is like a brick laid in the foundation of strength. Skip them and the foundation remains weak. Honor them and it grows firm. Strength isn't one big moment. It's thousands of small decisions stacked over time. We live in a world that celebrates talent and downplays toughness. But talent without toughness is fragile. It folds under pressure. It disappears when the weather changes. Strength, however, lasts. It holds up when things fall apart. It keeps you grounded when emotions run high. It keeps you focused when noise surrounds you. But here's the hard truth. Strength is lonely in the beginning. When you start doing hard things, you won't get much applause. In fact, some people will tell you to take it easy. They'll say, "Why are you pushing so hard? Why don't you relax?" That's because they've made peace with their limitations. But if you want to build real strength, you can't let the comfort of others dictate your capacity. There's a cost to strength. It costs comfort. It costs convenience. It costs ease. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable, physically, mentally, emotionally. You have to walk into situations where you don't feel ready and grow through them anyway. You have to tolerate failure, embarrassment, boredom, rejection, and fatigue. These are the weights of life, and the more you lift them, the more capable you become. Not just capable of surviving hard times, but of thriving during them. Because strength doesn't eliminate struggle. It makes you effective in struggle. It gives you composure in chaos, clarity in confusion, and calm under fire. Building strength also means giving up excuses. Excuses are attractive because they remove responsibility. They let you blame the weather, your upbringing, your boss, your partner, your past. But every excuse you accept weakens your mental framework. It convinces you that you're powerless. Strength grows when you take ownership, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. The moment you stop saying, "Why me?" and start saying, "What now?" is the moment you begin building strength. That shift from complaint to action, from self-pity to self-respect, that's where transformation begins. Consistency is another key ingredient. You don't get strong by doing something once. You get strong by showing up again and again, even when you don't feel like it. Consistency builds trust in yourself. Every time you follow through, you're sending a message to your mind that says, "I can count on me." That inner trust becomes the core of your strength. When life throws chaos your way, it's that trust that keeps you steady. You don't panic because you've trained. You don't collapse because you've been through worse. You're not shaken because your strength doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from within. Strength is quiet. It doesn't always look impressive. Sometimes it looks like saying no when you want to say yes. Sometimes it looks like staying calm in an argument. Sometimes it looks like showing up when you're tired or listening when you're angry. These moments aren't glamorous, but they matter. They're part of the training. They're the reps that nobody sees. And over time, they create a version of you that is deeply grounded, not perfect, not fearless, but anchored. Unshaken by the winds of life. Able to withstand storms because you've built a deep root system. And strength doesn't mean you never struggle. It means you no longer fear the struggle. You no longer run from pain. You've learned that pain is not the enemy, it's a teacher. It shows you where the work is. It reveals where you still have room to grow. Weakness hides from pain. Strength leans into it, not recklessly, but intentionally. To learn, to expand, to grow, and the more often you do that, the more capable you become of facing whatever comes your way. You also build strength by choosing the long term over the short term. That means trading immediate gratification for lasting growth. It means delaying comfort to create a better foundation. It means resisting the urge to quit when things get tough. That kind of long-term thinking is rare, but it's where strength lies, because every time you say, "I'll keep going," when it would be easier to stop, you're reinforcing your inner power. You're stretching your capacity. You're becoming the kind of person who doesn't flinch in the face of pressure. Strength is not something you suddenly gain. It's not a gift that appears when you need it. It's a resource you build long before you ever have to use it. It's the preparation that happens in the dark before the lights come on. It's the decision to keep going when no one's watching. It's the discipline of choosing growth over comfort, progress over perfection, and commitment over convenience. It's the accumulation of small, often invisible efforts that forge a person capable of standing tall in moments that would crush the unprepared. Every challenge you survive is preparation. Life doesn't hand you hardship just for the sake of pain. It hands you hardship to shape you, to stretch you, to get you ready for something ahead that your current self isn't quite built for yet. Every difficulty carries with it a lesson, a skill, or a layer of strength that you wouldn't have gained without walking through that fire. Most people want the success without the suffering, the reward without the resistance, but it simply doesn't work that way. Challenges are the training ground for future responsibility. They're the forge where resilience is formed, where wisdom is earned, and where clarity is sharpened. When you go through something hard, a loss, a failure, a betrayal, a setback, you're being introduced to a deeper version of yourself. Not the polished version, not the social version, but the raw one. The version that doesn't rely on applause or comfort to keep going. The version that has to decide whether to give in or grow up. That's the real you. And once you meet that part of yourself, you're changed. You become grounded in a way that comfort never allows. Strengthened in a way that no motivational quote can offer. There's something about walking through pain and coming out on the other side that no book, no seminar, no mentor can replicate. You earn your growth. You don't rent it. The challenge itself is never the reward. It's what it builds in you that matters, the patience it teaches, the humility it demands, the awareness it creates. Sometimes life will strip away your comforts so you're forced to rely on your character. That's the kind of growth that sticks. The kind that roots deep, and when you survive something that once scared you, discouraged you, or nearly broke you, you develop a quiet confidence. You stop fearing storms because you know you've endured worse. You stop doubting yourself because you've seen yourself rise from places others would have folded. Every scar becomes a signature that says, I was here and I didn't quit. When you're in the middle of a challenge, it's hard to see it as preparation. All you feel is the pressure. All you see is the weight. But what you don't see in the moment is how it's forming new mental calluses, how it's teaching you to breathe differently under stress, how it's expanding your emotional range. You're learning how to hold tension without breaking, how to sit with discomfort without running, how to keep moving forward when the path is muddy, uncertain, or invisible. These are critical life skills, and you don't learn them by reading about them, you learn them by living through them. Every challenge has layers. There's the surface level of the problem, what happened, who said what went wrong, but then there's the deeper level, which is about what it's teaching you. Maybe it's teaching you not to rely so much on others for validation. Maybe it's revealing the places you've been ignoring, your health, your relationships, your mindset. Maybe it's confronting you with truths you've avoided, and now you have no choice but to deal with them. That's how challenge refines you. It peels back the layers of your life and shows you what's real, what's working, what's not. Think about the people you respect most, the ones whose words carry weight, the ones whose presence brings peace. Chances are they've been through some things, real things. They didn't read their way into wisdom. They lived into it. They've been betrayed and chose forgiveness. They've failed and got back up. They've faced fear and walked forward anyway, and that's why their strength is so steady, because it wasn't built in theory. It was built in experience, in survival, in perseverance. And the same thing is possible for you, but only if you stop running from hard things and start extracting the meaning inside them. Some challenges are loud, public failures, lost jobs, broken relationships. Others are quiet, private battles with anxiety, loss of direction, silent grief. But whether loud or quiet, visible or hidden, every challenge is a mirror. It reflects who you are in the moment and invites you to grow beyond that version. It reveals your patterns, your beliefs, your blind spots. And if you lean in instead of checking out, you'll find that pain has a strange way of becoming purpose. not because the pain was good, but because it produced something good in you. Sometimes the greatest preparation comes from the times that felt most wasted. That season of loneliness taught you how to rely on yourself. That stretch of financial struggle taught you how to manage resources with wisdom. That heartbreak taught you how to set better boundaries. That failure humbled you just enough to make you teachable. It's all connected. Nothing is random if you're willing to learn from it. Life is not just happening to you. It's happening for you, shaping you for the road ahead. And often, you don't even know what you're being prepared for until much later. When the challenge ends, you don't walk away empty-handed. You walk away with data about who you are, what you need, where your weaknesses are, and what you're really capable of. That's incredibly valuable because self-awareness is power, and challenge increases that awareness faster than anything else. You begin to notice what triggers you, what drains you, what drives you. You begin to understand your limits, not as fixed barriers, but as areas that can be expanded through consistent effort. Every emotional breakdown you survive adds a tool to your kit. Every tough conversation you initiate strengthens your ability to lead. Every rejection you endure teaches you resilience and redirection. Preparation isn't always pretty. It doesn't always feel good, but it is always useful. You might not like what the challenge is doing to you in the moment, but one day you'll be thankful for what it did for you. You'll see how it forced you to grow up in areas where you were still living small. How it revealed strengths you didn't know you had. How it filtered out the things and people that weren't serving your future. That's the hidden gift inside every challenge. It has a way of clearing out the noise and leaving behind only what matters. And you start to realize that the discomfort you experienced wasn't just random suffering. It was pressure applied in the exact areas that needed development. It was life's way of stretching your capacity so you could carry more later, because the next level of your life will always demand a stronger version of you. A more disciplined you, a more grounded you, and that version is not created during easy times. It's created in the fire. It's created when you refuse to quit, even when quitting is the easier option. When you choose to adapt, even when complaining would feel more natural. That's the kind of preparation that builds people who lead, who last, and who leave an impact. It's easy to look back and wish certain challenges never happened. But sometimes the worst things life throws at you are the exact things that force you to stop playing small. They push you out of your comfort zone. They shove you into growth. They break the version of you that wasn't strong enough to carry your calling so that a new version can rise. You don't always get to control the timing or the intensity of the challenge, but you do get to control what you take from it. You get to decide whether it becomes a weight that breaks you or a tool that builds you. Life gives you what you train for, not what you wish for. Wishing is easy. It takes no effort to sit back and dream about a better life, a better body, a better relationship, a more successful career. But dreams without discipline are just fantasies. They're pictures in your mind that never make it to your hands. They don't move your feet, they don't guide your days, and they don't shape your reality. What shapes your reality is the training you commit to day after day. Life doesn't listen to your hopes. It watches your habits. It doesn't pay attention to your desires. It responds to your daily disciplines. It doesn't reward what you want. It reflects what you've prepared for every day. Your routines are signaling to life what you're training for. When you wake up late, skip important tasks, and spend hours in distraction, you're not training for excellence. You're training for mediocrity. You're preparing yourself to tolerate a life of missed opportunities. On the other hand, when you get up early, stay focused, and push through challenges even when you're tired, you're training for responsibility, for leadership, for success. It doesn't matter what you say you want. What matters is what your behavior is teaching life to expect from you. You might wish to be a great speaker, but if you never train your voice, study the craft, or stand in front of an audience. You're not training for influence. You might wish for a healthy body, but if you don't train your discipline around food, movement, and sleep, you're not preparing for wellness. The principle is simple and firm. You don't get what you wish for, you get what you repeatedly train for. That truth can feel heavy at first, especially if you've been leaning on hope instead of action, but it's also empowering because it means you can start training right now. You don't have to wait for permission, for the perfect moment, or for someone else to open a door. You train and life responds. Over time, your reality begins to shift to match your training. Your thoughts become sharper, your habits more aligned, your results more consistent. There are people out there with less talent than you, less intelligence, fewer resources, but they're further ahead. Why? Because they trained. They didn't leave their future up to chance. They got serious about the process. They showed up when it was hard. They practiced the fundamentals. They weren't waiting to feel ready. They were becoming ready by showing up again and again. Life has a way of opening doors for people who prepare. That's the difference between someone who stays stuck and someone who moves forward. The stuck person hopes. The moving person trains. You might wish for confidence, but confidence isn't handed out. It's built. It's trained by facing fears, taking small risks, speaking up even when your voice shakes. Each repetition of courage builds inner trust, and that trust becomes confidence. You can't just wish away fear. You have to train your nervous system to operate through it. That's how people grow, not by avoiding discomfort, but by becoming conditioned to handle it. You might wish to be calm under pressure, but calmness is trained. It's trained through stressful experiences, deep breathing, grounded thinking, and mental discipline. You become calm by putting yourself in hard situations and choosing control over panic again and again. Wishing is passive. Training is active. Wishing is about escape. Training is about engagement. Wishing gives you temporary hope. Training gives you permanent progress. When you train, you teach yourself to rely on action instead of emotion. You stop saying, "I hope this works out," and start saying, "I'm building the skills to make it work." That's the shift. That's where power lies, because once you commit to training, you no longer have to beg for results. You earn them. You no longer have to chase motivation. Discipline takes over. Training is about putting in reps even when you don't see immediate results. It's about showing up to the gym, to the book, to the business plan, to the craft, even when you're tired. It's about trusting the process over the feelings. Feelings are fleeting. The process compounds. People who win in the long term are not the ones who had the best circumstances. They're the ones who kept showing up when it wasn't easy. They understood that every repetition matters. Every small decision adds up. Every act of discipline is a brick in the foundation. Think of life like a mirror. It reflects your training. If you're inconsistent, scattered, reactive, the mirror shows you results that match. But if you're disciplined, focused, and deliberate, the mirror starts to show a different reflection. It won't happen overnight. Life doesn't respond to one good day or one motivated week. It responds to the version of you that keeps going long after the excitement has worn off. That's how you gain traction. That's how change sticks. Not with bursts of effort, but with sustainable rhythm. Even the way you think is trained. Optimism is trained. Clarity is trained. Patience is trained. You train your mindset by how you interpret events, by the conversations you engage in, by the content you consume, and by the questions you ask yourself. If you always ask, "Why is this happening to me?" you're training yourself to feel powerless. But if you ask, "What can I learn from this?" you're training your brain to look for growth. The difference in those two questions is the difference between stuck and strong. And like any muscle, the more you train a mindset, the stronger it becomes. Your time is your training ground. How you use it speaks louder than what you claim to value. If you say you want to build something meaningful, but your hours are filled with distraction, you're not training for success, you're training for regret. If you say relationships are important but never invest in them, you're not training for connection, you're training for disconnection. Training doesn't lie. It doesn't care about your intentions. It only responds to your repetitions, and here's something critical. Everyone is training for something, even if they don't realize it. You're either training yourself to handle responsibility, or you're training yourself to avoid it. You're training your body to be energized or exhausted. You're training your thoughts to be constructive or chaotic. You're training your character to be solid or shaky. There is no neutral ground. Every action, every choice, every pattern is forming something inside you. And eventually, your outer world will catch up to reflect that inner conditioning. People often say, "I just want a better life." That's fine, but wanting isn't enough. Training is required. A better life is not something you stumble upon. It's something you create through deliberate practice. You build a better life the same way you build anything else, through systems, through structure, through sacrifice. There is no fast pass, no free upgrade. Just repetitions, just discipline, just showing up and doing the work when no one is watching. The people who are calm under pressure, sharp in decision, making relentless in pursuit. They weren't born that way. They trained that way. They weren't given an easier path. They just chose a higher standard, and then they met that standard over and over again until it became second nature. What you see as natural in someone else is often the result of years of intentional effort behind closed doors. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not filled by time. It's filled by training. Time passes either way. What you do with that time determines what you become. You can wish, wait, and hope, or you can train, commit, and transform. The choice is always available, and the mirror of your life will reflect whichever one you choose. If you want a new life, start a new training program today. The life you're living right now is the result of the systems you've allowed, the standards you've kept, and the disciplines, or lack of them, that you've practiced daily. It's not fate, it's not luck, and it's not a matter of chance. It's training. If you want things to change in your life, then something has to change in your routine, your mindset, your associations, your decisions, and your actions. Change doesn't come from inspiration alone. It comes from instruction followed by repetition. You can read all the books, listen to all the speeches, and write down all the goals. But until you shift your training, your life won't follow. A new life doesn't begin on January 1st. It doesn't begin on your birthday or when the circumstances feel just right. It begins the moment you commit to a new pattern of behavior. That pattern becomes your new training ground, and that ground determines your growth. The mistake most people make is thinking they can get new results with the same old routines. But results are tied to systems. If your system trains you to procrastinate, you will always struggle with progress. If your system rewards you for comfort, you will avoid challenge. If your system is reactive, your life will be chaotic. But if you build a system that trains you to act with clarity, urgency, and focus, then your life will reflect those traits. Start a new training program today, whatever it is you're trying to improve. Want to get in better shape? Then your new training isn't just about exercise. It's about training your discipline, your consistency, your diet, your rest, and your ability to push through when your feelings try to interfere. Want to grow your income? Then train your mind for value creation. Study your craft, practice selling, master communication, discipline your spending habits. Want a stronger relationship? Train your attention. Train your patience, train your communication, your ability to listen, your ability to understand someone's needs. Besides, your own training programs are not about intensity, they are about consistency. The person who sprints hard for one day and quits is not on a training path. They are on an emotional high. True transformation comes from small, repeated steps taken every day. Your future doesn't care how pumped you feel today. It cares how disciplined you are tomorrow morning. You don't become better because you feel like it. You become better because you made a decision and you reinforced it with action again and again until it became who you are. The beauty of starting a new training program is that it puts you back in control. You stop waiting for permission. You stop blaming your past. You stop hoping someone else will rescue you. You become the one responsible for your outcomes, and that responsibility is where power lies. When you start training for something, even if it's small, you begin to shift your identity. You start to see yourself not as someone who is stuck, but as someone who is building. Not as someone who is helpless, but as someone who is preparing. That shift alone is worth more than motivation, because once your identity starts to change, your standards rise with it. People will often say, "But I've tried before and it didn't work." That's not failure, that's feedback. That's part of the process. Training means learning what didn't work, adjusting your approach, and trying again with more wisdom. You don't stop brushing your teeth because you missed a day. You don't stop going to work because yesterday was rough. Why would you stop training for a better life just because it got hard? Hard isn't a signal to quit. It's a signal that you're building strength. It's confirmation that you're growing. No muscle is built without resistance. No mind is sharpened without challenge. No life is transformed without consistency sometimes. Starting a new training program means removing old patterns. You can't pour clean water into a dirty cup and expect purity. You might have to eliminate distractions, reduce exposure to negative influences, or stop indulging in habits that drain your focus and energy. That's part of training too. It's not just what you do, it's also what you stop doing. You may have to unfollow some voices, say no to certain invitations, or distance yourself from environments that encourage you to stay small, not because you're better than others, but because you're choosing to become better than who you were yesterday. Start small, but start with intention. A new life isn't built in a weekend, it's built in 1,000 deliberate moments. Waking up 10 minutes earlier, reading 5 pages a day, saying no to things that don't align, speaking up when you'd usually stay silent. Tracking your spending instead of guessing, turning off the screen and facing the work. These things don't seem grand, but they compound. Over time, they transform your standards, and transformed standards produce a transformed life. Your outer world begins to reflect your inner decisions. Your energy improves, your confidence grows, and your direction becomes clear. Every day is a classroom. Every moment is part of your training. When you choose discipline over comfort, you're training strength. When you face fear instead of hiding, you're training courage. When you stay focused instead of distracted, you're training excellence. This is how people go from ordinary to extraordinary. Not by accident, but by intentional training. They aren't born with special abilities. They just trained when others made excuses. They got up early. They stayed late. They studied when no one was watching. They failed, learned, and adjusted. They kept training, and their life became a reflection of that training. The truth is, the gap between the life you want and the life you have is not closed by wishing. It's closed by training. Wishing is passive. Training is active. Wishing puts hope in the hands of time. Training puts time in your hands. You use it. You shape it. You maximize it. You build through it. That's what starting a new training program is all about. It's deciding that today, not someday, is the right time to act. It's deciding that you're no longer just thinking about what could be. You're building what will be. And in that shift, you begin to live with purpose instead of pressure, with direction instead of confusion. You don't need to be perfect to start. You just need to be committed. Perfection is a myth, but progress is measurable. You can train to get better every single day, and that training builds confidence. Confidence doesn't come from empty affirmations. It comes from proof. You look back and say, "I did the work." That's where real belief is born. And when that belief grows, you stop needing external validation. You don't have to prove yourself to others. You already proved it to yourself through your discipline, your action, and your persistence. Start a new training program today, and let that training become the foundation of your next season. Whether it's personal growth, professional advancement, financial mastery, physical health, or emotional resilience, every new level requires a new level of training. What got you here won't get you there. You can't live tomorrow's life with yesterday's habits, so you upgrade, you evolve, you build, you grow, and you do it on purpose. Not by chance, not by luck, not by hope, but by training. The question is never, can I have a better life? The question is always, am I willing to train for it?